Hyun-woo Park wiped the sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the large antenna on top of the communications building. The sun was setting on Kepler 442b, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange that still amazed him after 3 years on this mining colony. He climbed down the ladder and walked back into the small room filled with blinking machines and screens. "Any word from Earth today?" asked So-Min Lee, looking up from her desk where she was checking the daily reports. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. "Not yet," Hyun-woo replied, settling into his chair. "But the day is still young back home. Maybe we'll get something about the new mining equipment we requested." The two of them worked together every day, making sure the colony stayed connected to Earth and the other human settlements scattered across this part of the galaxy. It was quiet work, but important. Without communication, the miners and their families would feel completely alone among the stars. Suddenly, one of the machines started beeping loudly. So-Min frowned and walked over to check it. "That's strange. We're getting a signal, but it's not from any human colony." Hyun-woo rolled his chair over to look at the screen. The signal was weak and broken, crackling with static. "Can you clean it up?" So-Min's fingers flew over the controls, adjusting frequencies and filters. Slowly, the static began to clear, and they could hear a voice speaking in a language they didn't recognize. But then, the universal translator kicked in, and the words became clear. "This is anyone listening. Altarian homeworld under attack. Need help. Please." The two humans looked at each other with wide eyes. So-Min quickly began recording the message and trying to strengthen the signal even more. As the transmission became clearer, they could hear the desperation in the alien voice. "The Voidborn Empire has surrounded our planet. Our fleet is destroyed. Our shields are failing. We have sent this message to every civilization we know, begging for military aid. Our people are dying. Our children are hiding in underground shelters. If anyone can hear this, please help us. We don't have much time left." The message repeated several times before cutting off into silence. Hyun-woo stared at the screen, his heart racing. "So-Min, did we just hear what I think we heard? An entire alien civilization asking for help," she whispered. "And they're dying." Hyun-woo stood up and began pacing around the small room. "We have to do something. We have to tell someone." "But who?" So-Min asked. "We're just a mining colony. We don't have any military ships or weapons. What can we do?" Before Hyun-woo could answer, another signal came through. This time, it was a response to the Altarian message. The voice was cold and mechanical. "This is the Centauri Federation. We regret that we cannot provide military assistance. The Voidborn Empire is too powerful. We must protect our own worlds first." More responses followed, one after another. Each one was a refusal. The Orion Trade Consortium said they were too far away. The crystal beings claimed they were in meditation and could not be disturbed. The mighty Draconian Empire simply said, "No," with no explanation. So-Min counted them on her fingers. That's 12 different civilizations, and every single one has said no. How can they just abandon an entire planet of innocent people? Hyun-woo asked, his voice filled with anger. How can they sit back and watch while children die? The communications room fell silent except for the humming of the machines. Outside, the purple sunset was fading into night, and the first stars were beginning to appear. Hyun-woo walked to the window and looked up at them, thinking about all the civilizations out there among those stars. All of them had advanced technology, powerful fleets, and thousands of years of experience with space travel. And all of them were too afraid or too selfish to help. Hyun-woo, So-min said quietly. What are you thinking? He turned around to face her, and she could see a determined look in his eyes. I'm thinking about Earth. Earth? But Hyun-woo, you know what the other civilizations think of us. They call us primitive newcomers. They say we've only been in space for 50 years and don't understand how things work out here. Maybe that's exactly why we need to try, he said. Maybe being new means we haven't learned to be afraid yet. Maybe being primitive means we still remember what it feels like to care about strangers. So-min shook her head. But even if Earth wanted to help, what could they do? We don't have the big fleets or the advanced weapons that these other civilizations have. Hyun-woo walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe Earth will say no, just like everyone else. But shouldn't we at least give them the chance to decide? Another transmission came through, and they both hoped it might be someone offering to help the Altarians. Instead, it was another refusal, this time from a civilization they had never heard of before. That's 13, So-min said sadly. 13 civilizations that could help, and none of them will. Hyun-woo looked at the recording equipment and made his decision. So-min, I want you to prepare a transmission to Earth. Include the original Altarian message and all the responses we've received. Are you sure? The Earth government might not appreciate us getting involved in galactic politics. Maybe not, Hyun-woo admitted. But I'd rather get in trouble for trying to save lives than live with myself knowing I could have done something and didn't. So-min nodded and began preparing the transmission. As she worked, she said, You know, if Earth does decide to help, it would be the first time in galactic history that humans got involved in something this big. Maybe it's time, Hyun-woo said, watching the stars through the window. Maybe it's time the galaxy learned what humans are really made of. The transmission was ready. So-min looked at Hyun-woo one more time. Once we send this, there's no taking it back. Then let's send it, he said. Let's give Earth the chance to prove that being human means something. So-min pressed the button, and the message began its long journey through space toward Earth. Somewhere out there, an alien civilization was dying while the galaxy watched and did nothing. But now, at least, humanity would have the chance to choose what kind of people they wanted to be among the stars. Admiral Tae-ho Kim was enjoying his morning coffee in the deep underwater command center when the urgent message arrived. The Pacific Defense Command sat on the ocean floor, hidden from sight and protected by layers of water and steel. Most people on Earth didn't even know it existed. The young communications officer rushed into his office, holding a datapad with shaking hands. Sir, we have an urgent transmission from the Kepler mining colony. You need to see this right away. Tae-ho set down his coffee and took the pad. As he read the message and listened to the alien transmission, his expression grew more serious with each word. How long ago did this arrive? 20 minutes ago, sir. We verified it's real. The Altarian civilization is definitely under attack, and every major galactic power has refused to help. Tae-ho stood up and walked to the large window that looked out into the dark ocean. Fish swam past, unaware that the most important military decision in human history was being made just beyond the glass. Get me President Choi on the secure line, he said, and wake up the Joint Chiefs. Tell them this is Code 7 priority. Within An hour, Taeho found himself in a video conference with the most powerful people on Earth. President Ji-Yeon Choi sat at the head of a long table in the underground bunker beneath Seoul. General Woo Jin-yoon was patched in from the Lunar Defense Station, while Fleet Commander Ha Song joined from the Mars orbital platform. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," President Choi said, her voice calm but tense. "An alien civilization is about to be wiped out, and they're asking for help. Every advanced galactic civilization has said no, and now they want to know what Earth will do." "That's correct, Madam President," Taeho replied. "According to our intelligence, the Altarians are peaceful people. They've never attacked anyone. The Void-born Empire is destroying them simply because they want their planet and its resources." General Woo Jin leaned forward on the screen. "With respect, this isn't our fight. We've been in space for only 50 years. The galactic community has made it clear they don't consider us equals. Why should we risk our people for aliens who have never shown us any friendship?" Dr. Dongmin Kang, Earth's chief scientist for alien affairs, spoke up from his seat at the table. "Because, General, this is exactly the chance we've been waiting for. For 50 years, we've been treated like children by the galactic community. They won't trade with us fairly. They won't share technology. They won't even invite us to their meetings. But now they're all showing their true nature. They're cowards." "That's a harsh word, Doctor," Fleet Commander Hana said from her station near Mars. "But it's the right word," Dr. Dongmin continued. "They have all the power, all the advanced weapons, all the experience. But when innocent people need help, they run away and hide. This is our chance to show them what humanity really stands for." President Choi rubbed her temples. She had been in office for 3 years, and this was by far the biggest decision she had ever faced. "Admiral Kim, give me your honest assessment. If we decide to help, what are our chances?" Taeho took a deep breath. "Honestly, Madam President, I don't know. We've never fought the Void-born Empire. Our intelligence on them is limited. But I can tell you this. We've been preparing for 50 years for a threat like this. Our ships, our weapons, our training, everything has been designed for defensive warfare against superior enemies. How many ships could we mobilize?" "The Yatas?" President asked. "If we activate everything, including the reserve fleets and the ships we've kept hidden, approximately 300 vessels." The room fell silent. Even General Woo Jin looked surprised. 300? I thought our official fleet size was 90 ships. Admiral Taeho smiled grimly. "The official fleet is what we show to galactic observers. The real fleet is what we've been building while they ignored us. Every asteroid mining station, every lunar facility, every Mars outpost. They've all been cover for our real defense program." Fleet Commander Hana nodded. "The Admiral is right. I've been overseeing construction of the Shadow Fleet for 10 years. We have dreadnoughts built inside hollowed-out asteroids, stealth destroyers hidden in lunar caves, and carrier groups stationed in the outer system where no one looks." "But why?" President Choi asked. "Why build such a massive fleet in secret?" "Doctor," Dongmin answered, "because we learned from human history. When a new civilization encounters older, more powerful ones, they usually get conquered or destroyed. We decided to be ready for anything. We built our ships not for conquest, but for protection. Not to attack others, but to defend the innocent." General Woo Jin was studying his data pad. "According to this, our quantum fold drives are actually faster than anything the galactic civilizations use. How is that possible?" "Because they stopped innovating," Admiral Taeho explained. They've been using the same technology for thousands of years. They think it's impossible to go faster than their old fusion drives. We proved them wrong. President Choi stood up and walked to a wall display showing Earth from space. The blue planet looked peaceful and beautiful, with white clouds swirling over the continents. If we do this, everything changes. We can't go back to being the quiet newcomers who mind their own business. Maybe that was never who we really were, Dr. Dongmin said softly. Maybe it's time the galaxy learned what humans do when children are in danger. The president was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she turned back to the group. Admiral Kim, how long would it take to mobilize the entire fleet? 6 hours for full mobilization. 12 hours to reach the Altarian system. And the Altarians have how long? According to the transmission, maybe 18 hours before their shields fail completely. President Choi closed her eyes and made the decision that would echo through galactic history. Do it. Mobilize everything. Send every ship we have. Admiral Tae-ho felt his heart racing. Yes, Madam President. What should I tell the fleet commanders? Tell them, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word, that Earth is going to war. Not for conquest, not for resources, not for glory. We're going to war because it's the right thing to do. Tell them that today, humanity shows the galaxy what real strength looks like. As the video conference ended, Admiral Tae-ho began sending out the activation codes. Across the solar system, hidden bases came to life. Massive doors opened in asteroid surfaces. Ships that had been sleeping in the darkness powered up their engines. Crews that had trained for years for this moment ran to their battle stations. Within an hour, the largest military mobilization in human history was underway. And for the first time in 50 years, Earth was about to remind the galaxy that humans had not come to the stars to hide. Captain Sung-Ho Lim stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable as it emerged from the hollowed-out asteroid where it had been hidden for 10 years. Around him, his crew worked quickly and quietly, bringing all systems online. Through the main view screen, he could see dozens of other ships appearing from their hiding places throughout the asteroid belt. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Ye-Jin Park from the communications station, "we're receiving signals from ships all across the solar system. The lunar squadrons are launching. The Mars Defense Fleet is moving. Even the Deep Space Patrol ships are coming back." Sung-Ho nodded, watching as more and more ships appeared on his tactical display. Each one represented years of secret construction, hidden from the galactic observers who occasionally visited Earth. "How many do we have so far?" 237 ships confirmed and rising, sir. Admiral Kim estimates we'll have over 300 by the time everyone reaches the rallying point. From the engineering station, Chief Engineer Min-Soo Han called out, "Captain, the quantum fold drive is ready. All systems are showing green. We can jump whenever you give the order." Sung-Ho looked around his bridge at the men and women who had trained for this moment. They were nervous but determined. None of them had ever been in a real battle, but they all knew what they were fighting for. "Sir," Ye-Jin said, "we're getting a transmission from Admiral Kim on the Sol." The main screen changed to show Admiral Tae-ho Kim standing on his own bridge. Behind him, Sung-Ho could see the controlled chaos of a flagship preparing for war. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim. Today we make history. For 50 years, the galactic community has treated humanity like children. They've told us we're too young, too primitive, too weak to matter. Today, we prove them wrong." The Admiral paused, and when he continued, his voice was filled with quiet strength. "We're not going to the Altarian system for glory or conquest. We're going because innocent people are dying and no one else will help them. We're going because it's the right thing to do. And we're going to show the galaxy what human beings are really made of." On ships throughout the solar system, thousands of crew members listened to their admiral's words. On the stealth destroyer Shadow of Earth, Captain Ye-Jin Park checked her weapon systems one final time. Her ship was designed to be invisible to enemy sensors, armed with weapons that could strike without warning. "Navigation," she called to her crew. "Are we ready for quantum fold?" "Yes, Captain. Course is plotted for the Altarian system. We'll arrive 12 hours ahead of the main fleet to gather intelligence." On the carrier Busan, Wing Commander So Young Jang was addressing her fighter pilots. "Listen up, everyone. Our job is to protect the big ships and get the Altarian civilians to safety. I know you're all thinking about the fact that we've never fought aliens before. But remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. And remember that we're not just representing ourselves today. We're representing all of humanity." Throughout the fleet, similar scenes were playing out. On the medical ship Seoul Hope, Dr. Soo-Jin Lee was preparing her staff to treat both human and alien wounded. On the logistics vessel New Seoul, Supply Officer Kyung-Ho Park was double-checking that every ship had enough ammunition and supplies for an extended battle. But perhaps the most important preparation was happening on the Indomitable itself, where communications specialist Kyung-Ho Park was trying to establish contact with the Altarian homeworld. "Captain," he called out, "I'm picking up very weak signals from the planet. Their communication systems are badly damaged, but I think I can get through." "Do it," Sung-Ho ordered. "Let them know help is coming." As Kyung-Ho worked to boost the signal, the bridge crew watched their tactical displays fill with more and more human ships. What had started as a few dozen vessels was now approaching 300. It was the largest fleet Earth had ever assembled. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Da Yun Shin, "all ships are reporting ready for quantum fold jump. The entire fleet can move as one." Sung-Ho looked at the chronometer. They had mobilized in record time, but the Altarians were running out of time even faster. "All ships. This is Captain Lim on the Indomitable. Execute quantum fold jump in 60 seconds. Destination, Altarian system. May fortune favor us all." As the countdown reached 0, 300 human warships engaged their quantum fold drives simultaneously. The effect was spectacular. Space itself seemed to bend and twist as the ships disappeared from the solar system in a flash of blue-white light. What they left behind was even more impressive. Throughout the galaxy, alien monitoring stations detected the massive energy surge from the Sol system. Military analysts who had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers suddenly found themselves frantically updating their threat assessments. On the Centauri homeworld, Fleet Admiral Zexus stared at his displays in disbelief. 300 ships? How is that possible? Our intelligence said the humans had less than 100 vessels total. On the crystal being world, the hive mind paused its eternal meditation to consider this new development. The young mammals have been busy. Even the mighty Draconian Empire took notice. General Craxus, the scarred veteran of a dozen galactic wars, studied the energy readings with professional interest. Perhaps we have underestimated these humans. But the most surprised beings in the galaxy were the Voidborn themselves. Admiral Krexmar, commanding the siege of the Altarian homeworld, received the report with a mixture of confusion and anger. Humans? The primitive Earth monkeys are sending a fleet? How many ships? Sir, the energy readings suggest at least 300 vessels, and they're traveling faster than our ships can, Krexmar laughed coldly. Impossible. Humans have barely learned to leave their own star system. Send a squadron to intercept them. We'll destroy this pathetic rescue attempt and teach the galaxy. What happens to those who interfere with the void-born empire? But as the human fleet raced through quantum-fold space toward the Altarian system, they carried with them something that no alien civilization possessed anymore: the absolute certainty that they were doing the right thing. They were not coming as conquerors or pirates. They were coming as protectors, and they would not fail the people who needed them. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Sung-Ho Lim watched the navigation display count down the distance to their destination. In 6 hours, they would drop out of quantum-fold space at the edge of the Altarian system, and then the galaxy would learn what happened when humans decided to fight for something bigger than themselves. The Altarian system was quiet except for the steady bombardment of the dying planet's shields. Voidborn Admiral Krexmar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the energy readings from the planet below. Soon, the shields would fail completely, and his fleet could begin the final phase of the conquest. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're detecting some kind of energy disturbance at the edge of the system." Krexmar barely looked up from his tactical display. "Probably just a solar flare. Continue the bombardment," but the energy disturbance was growing stronger. On monitoring stations throughout the system, void-born sensors began detecting massive gravitational waves, the kind that only appeared when something very large was moving very fast through space. Suddenly, space itself seemed to tear open at 3 different points around the system. Blue-white light flashed as ships began emerging from quantum-fold space. First came a dozen small vessels moving in perfect formation. Then larger ships appeared: destroyers, cruisers, and carriers. Finally, the massive dreadnoughts materialized, their hulls gleaming in the light of the alien sun. On the Voidborn flagship, the tactical officer stared at his screens in disbelief. "Sir, we have 300 ships entering the system. They're human vessels." For the first time in hours, Admiral Krexmar looked up from his display. "Human? That's impossible. Humans don't have 300 ships. They barely have a space program." "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures we've never seen before. These ships are more advanced than our intelligence suggested." Krexmar studied the tactical display as more human ships continued to appear. Their formation was unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. Instead of the traditional battle lines used by most civilizations, the human ships moved in complex 3-dimensional patterns, like a dance choreographed by a master strategist. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Sung-Ho watched his tactical display fill with red dots representing void-born ships. There were over 200 enemy vessels surrounding the planet, far more than intelligence had suggested. "Communications," he called out. "Get me Admiral Kim." Admiral Tae-Ho Kim appeared on the main screen, standing calmly on his bridge despite the overwhelming odds. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim. Execute Formation Delta 7. Protect the civilian evacuation routes and establish a defensive perimeter around the planet." The human fleet moved with precision that amazed even veteran Voidborn officers. Ships that had been scattered across the system suddenly formed protective walls between the enemy fleet and the planet. Fighter squadrons launched from carriers, creating clouds of fast-moving defenders. Wing Commander So Young-Jang led her fighters in a sweeping patrol around the planet's upper atmosphere. "All pilots, remember our mission. Priority 1 is protecting civilian ships. Priority 2 is supporting the capital ships. Engage only when necessary." On the Voidborn flagship, Admiral Krexmar was growing angry. Send them a communication. I want to know what these primitive humans think they're doing. The message reached the Indomitable within minutes. Admiral Krexmar's harsh voice filled the bridge. Human fleet. This is Admiral Krexmar of the Voidborn Empire. You are interfering in Imperial business. Withdraw immediately or face complete destruction. Captain Xiong-Ho looked at his communications officer. Patch me through to their flagship. The response from the Indomitable was calm and clear. Voidborn Fleet. This is Captain Xiong-Ho Lim of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are attacking innocent civilians. You have 1 minute to withdraw from Altarian space before we remove you. The bridge of the Voidborn flagship fell silent. No one had ever spoken to Admiral Krexmar like that. He was a veteran of 50 conquered worlds, feared throughout the galaxy for his ruthless tactics. Did they just threaten us? Asked the tactical officer. Krexmar's face twisted with rage. All ships, attack formation. Destroy every human vessel. Show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the Voidborn Empire. But as the Voidborn fleet began to move toward the humans, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't retreat. They didn't panic. Instead, they moved into defensive positions with movement so smooth and coordinated that it looked like they had been fighting together for decades. On the planet below, Ambassador Jin-A Yu watched the orbital battle begin through the observation. Windows of the emergency bunker, explosions lit up the sky as energy weapons crossed the darkness between fleets. They really came, whispered Counselor Veltar. The humans really came for us. I told you, Jin-A said, her voice filled with pride. When humans make a promise, we keep it. In space above them, the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human ships fought with a controlled fury that surprised everyone. Their weapons were designed not just to destroy, but to disable when possible. When Voidborn ships lost their engines, human vessels moved to capture them rather than finish them off. Captain Yejin Park commanded her stealth destroyer Shadow of Earth as it slipped unseen through the enemy formation. Her ship's advanced systems allowed her to strike Voidborn vessels without being detected, but instead of going for kill shots, she targeted their weapons and engines. Captain, called her tactical officer, we could destroy their command ship if we target their reactor core. Negative, Yejin replied. Disable their weapons and communications. We're here to stop a massacre, not start one. Throughout the human fleet, similar orders were being followed. These were warriors fighting for protection, not conquest. They had come not to destroy an empire, but to save innocent lives. Admiral Krexmar watched in growing frustration as his ships were systematically disabled rather than destroyed. The humans were fighting with tactics he had never encountered. Precise, efficient, but strangely merciful. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving transmissions from other galactic civilizations. They're asking for battle reports. What do you mean? Sir, it appears the entire galaxy is watching this battle. We're receiving observation requests from the Centauri Federation, the Orion Trade Consortium, even the Crystal Beings. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Krexmar realized he was not just fighting a battle, he was performing for an audience. Every civilization that had refused to help the Altarians was now watching to see what would happen when someone actually tried. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Tae-Ho Kim studied the tactical situation. The Voidborn were powerful, but they fought like conquerors. They were used to overwhelming weaker enemies with superior numbers and firepower. They had never faced an enemy that fought purely to protect others. All ships, he announced over The fleet communication system. Remember why we're here. We didn't come to destroy the Voidborn Empire. We came to save the Altarian people. Stay focused on our mission." As the battle raged above the planet, children in underground bunkers looked up at the ceiling and listened to the sounds of ships fighting in the sky. For the first time in days, they weren't afraid. Someone had come to help them. Someone cared enough to risk everything for strangers. And in that moment, the galaxy began to understand that something had changed. The humans weren't fighting like any civilization they had ever known. They were fighting like something new, like people who believed that the strong should protect the weak, no matter the cost. The age of standing by and watching innocents die was ending. The age of human intervention had begun. The space around Altaria Prime had become a maze of laser fire and explosions. Human and void-born ships danced through the darkness, but this was unlike any battle the galaxy had ever witnessed. While the void-born fought to destroy, the humans fought to protect. Lieutenant Commander Da Yun-shin coordinated the civilian evacuation from her position on the bridge of the medical ship Soul Hope. Through her view screen, she could see dozens of small Altarian civilian ships fleeing the planet's surface, heading for the safety of the outer system. "Medical Team Alpha, we have incoming wounded from the cruiser Daegu," she called over the ship's communication system. "Prepare emergency surgery Bay 3. Dr. Soo-Jin Lee was already moving through the medical bay, treating both human and Altarian wounded side by side. The injured Altarians stared at her in amazement. They had never seen aliens who cared for wounded enemies with the same attention they gave their own people. "Doctor," called one of her assistants, "we have a void-born prisoner who's badly injured. Should we treat him?" Dr. Soo-Jin didn't hesitate. "Of course. Get him to Surgery Bay 2 immediately." The wounded void-born soldier, a warrior who had spent his life conquering other worlds, watched in confusion as human doctors worked to save his life. This was not how war was supposed to work. Enemies were supposed to kill each other, not heal each other. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Sung-ho watched the tactical display with growing concern. The human fleet was holding its own, but the Voidborn had more ships and were fighting desperately. Worse, more Voidborn reinforcements were arriving from other systems. "Captain," called Communications Officer Kyung-ho Park, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's Ambassador Yu." Jin Ae's voice filled the bridge. "Captain Lim, the planetary shields are at 15% and falling. We need to start evacuating the surface immediately." "Understood, Ambassador. We're sending down evacuation shuttles now." But even as he spoke, Sung-ho knew they had a problem. The Voidborn ships were positioned between the human fleet and the planet. Any evacuation shuttles would have to fly through enemy fire. Wing Commander So-Young Jang understood the situation immediately. "All fighter squadrons, this is Jang. Form up for escort duty. We're going to clear a path for the evacuation shuttles." Her fighter pilots responded instantly. They had trained for years for this moment, not to be heroes, but to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. The small, fast ships dove toward the planet's surface, drawing void-born fire away from the larger evacuation vessels. One of her pilots, Flight Lieutenant Jun-Ho Kim, found himself surrounded by 3 void-born fighters. His ship was faster and more maneuverable, but he was outnumbered. Instead of trying to escape, he kept flying toward the planet, forcing the enemy fighters to follow him away from the evacuation shuttles. "Jun-Ho!" So-Young called over the radio. "Get out of there!" "Negative, Commander. I've got civilian ships below me. I'm staying until they're clear. Junho's fighter took heavy damage, but he kept flying until the last evacuation shuttle had escaped the planet's atmosphere. Only then did he eject, his fighter exploding in a brilliant flash as he parachuted down toward the planet's surface. Throughout the battle, human ships continued to demonstrate tactics that confused and frustrated their enemies. When voidborn, vessels were disabled. Human rescue ships moved in to collect the survivors. When enemy ships surrendered, they were offered medical aid and safe passage. Commander Yejin Park, leading her squadron of stealth destroyers, had managed to slip behind the main voidborn formation. From this position, she could have destroyed their command ship with a single torpedo spread. Instead, she targeted their communication arrays and engine systems. All stealth ships, this is Park. Disable, don't destroy. Our goal is to end this battle, not win a body count. Her ships struck like ghosts, appearing just long enough to cripple enemy vessels before vanishing back into the darkness. The Voidborn found themselves fighting an enemy they could barely see, one that struck with precision but showed mercy even in victory. Admiral Krexmar paced his bridge in growing fury. His superior numbers meant nothing if his ships couldn't. Coordinate attacks. His advanced weapons were useless against enemies who seemed to anticipate his every move. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "How can primitive humans outfight the Voidborn Empire?" His tactical officer studied the displays with professional interest. "Sir, they're not fighting to conquer. They're fighting to protect. Every move they make is designed to minimize casualties while achieving their objectives. It's actually brilliant." "I don't want analysis," Krexmar shouted. "I want those human ships destroyed." But even as he spoke, more of his vessels were being disabled by the precise human attacks. The humans weren't trying to destroy his fleet. They were trying to make it impossible for him to continue attacking civilians. On the planet below, the evacuation was proceeding faster than anyone had thought possible. Human transport ships, protected by fighter escorts, were lifting thousands of Altarian civilians to safety every hour. Medical ships provided aid to the wounded, while engineering vessels worked to repair the planetary shields. Chief Engineer Minsu Han had taken a team down to the planet's shield generators. Working alongside Altarian technicians, they managed to boost the shield strength by 20% using human technology that the aliens had never seen before. "How is this possible?" asked the lead Altarian engineer. "Your technology should be centuries behind ours." Minsu smiled as he connected the last power coupling. "Maybe we just think about problems differently. You built these shields to keep things out. We modified them to protect people inside." As the planetary shields strengthened, the tactical situation in space began to shift. The human fleet had successfully established a protective barrier around the planet, making it impossible for the Voidborn to resume their bombardment. Admiral Taeho Kim made a decision that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. Instead of pressing his advantage, he opened a communication channel to the entire Voidborn fleet. "Voidborn ships, this is Admiral Kim of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your attack on this planet has failed. Your ships are disabled. Your mission is impossible. But we're not your enemies. Withdraw now, and we'll provide medical aid to your wounded and safe passage out of this system." The offer stunned both sides. In galactic military history, no conquering force had ever offered mercy to a defeated enemy. Wars ended with surrender or destruction, never with compassion. Admiral Krexmar stared at the communication panel in disbelief. "They're offering us safe passage?" "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we've lost 60% of our fleet effectiveness. Our reinforcements are still hours away. And the humans, The humans are still offering to treat our wounded. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Krexmar found himself facing an enemy who fought not for conquest, but for principles he had forgotten existed. These humans could have destroyed his fleet, but instead, they offered mercy. And in that moment, watching human medical ships moving to aid his wounded warriors, the hardened, void-born admiral began to understand that the galaxy had just encountered something it had never seen before, a civilization that was strong enough to win, but wise enough to choose mercy over vengeance. Admiral Tae-Ho Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display as his fleet maintained its protective formation around Alteria Prime. The immediate battle was won, but Voidborn reinforcements were still approaching from 3 different directions. His ships had fought brilliantly, but they were tired and ammunition was running low. "Sir," called Communications Officer Kyung-Ho Park, "we're receiving multiple new contacts entering the system. It's not more Voidborn ships." Tae-Ho frowned and studied the display. New energy signatures were appearing at the edge of the system, different from both human and Voidborn vessels. "Who are they?" "Sir, I'm receiving identification signals from the Centauri Federation. They're requesting permission to join the battle." Before Tae-Ho could respond, more signals appeared. "Admiral, we also have ships from the Orion Trade Consortium entering the system, and the Crystal Beings, and, sir, I'm counting at least 6 different civilizations. On the planet below, Ambassador Jin A.U. watched the orbital displays in the emergency bunker with growing amazement. Counselor Veltar stood beside her, his blue skin pale with exhaustion, but his eyes bright with hope. "I don't understand," Veltar said. "These are the same civilizations that refuse to help us. Why are they coming now?" Jin-A smiled, though tears were running down her cheeks. "Because someone showed them what courage looks like. Because humans reminded them what it means to do the right thing." In space above them, the first non-human vessel to arrive was the Centauri Federation cruiser Star of Rigel. Captain Yejin Park, commanding the stealth destroyer Shadow of Earth, was the first to make contact with them. "Centauri vessel, this. Is Captain Park of the Earth Defense Fleet. State your intentions." The response came in the melodic voice typical of Centauri beings. "Captain Park, this is Commander Velnara of the Centauri Federation. We request permission to assist in the defense of Alteria Prime." Captain Park raised an eyebrow. "Commander, didn't your government refuse to help when the Altarians first called for aid?" There was a long pause before the Centauri commander responded. "Captain, we were mistaken. We let fear overcome our duty to protect the innocent. We're here to correct that mistake." Similar conversations were happening throughout the system as more alien fleets arrived. The Orion Trade Consortium sent a message saying they had been delayed by navigation errors. The Crystal Beings claimed they had been meditating on the proper response. Even the proud Draconian Empire arrived, claiming they had always intended to help, but had been organizing their forces. Technical specialist Sung Min Oh, working in the engineering section of the Indomitable, shook his head as he monitored the communications. "They're all lying, of course. They didn't come because they suddenly grew courage. They came because we made them look like cowards." Chief Engineer Min-Soo Han nodded. "Maybe, but they're here now. That's what matters." Admiral Tae-Ho Kim found himself in the unprecedented position of commanding a combined galactic fleet. Ships from a dozen different civilizations now formed a protective barrier around the Altarian homeworld. It was the largest alliance fleet ever assembled, united not by treaty or politics, but by shame and the desire to be on the right side of history. All Allied ships, Tejo announced over the combined communication network, welcome to the defense of Altaria Prime. Our mission is simple: protect the innocent and end this conflict with minimal bloodshed. The response from the various alien commanders was enthusiastic but awkward. They had spent decades dismissing humanity as primitive newcomers, and now they were taking orders from a human admiral. General Craxus of the Draconian Empire, a scarred veteran of countless galactic wars, transmitted a private message to Admiral Kim. Human Admiral, I want you to know that in 40 years of military service, I have never seen a more professional display of tactical excellence. Your species may be young, but you have the hearts of true warriors. As the combined fleet took up positions around the planet, the approaching void-born reinforcements found themselves facing not just the human fleet, but an alliance representing most of the galactic community. What had started as a simple conquest had become a test of galactic values. Admiral Krexmar, his flagship still disabled but his crew receiving medical aid from human doctors, watched the arriving ships with growing despair. How many fleets are out there now? His tactical officer counted the energy signatures. Sir, we're reading ships from 12 different civilizations. Over 800 vessels total. For the first time in void-born military history, Admiral Krexmar was facing opponents who outnumbered him. But more importantly, he was facing opponents who were fighting for something bigger than conquest or resources. Dr. Sujin Lee had been working for hours treating wounded from all sides of the battle. Void-born, human, and Altarian patients lay side by side in her medical bay, receiving equal care regardless of which flag they fought under. One young void-born soldier, barely old enough to serve in his empire's military, grabbed her hand as she treated his injuries. "Doctor, why are you helping me? I came here to destroy your friends." Dr. Sujin smiled gently. "Because you're hurt. And I'm a doctor. That's all I need to know." The soldier stared at her in confusion. In the void-born empire, enemies were enemies. There was no mercy in war, no compassion for the defeated. Yet here was a human doctor treating him with the same care she gave her own people. Meanwhile, technical specialist Sung-Min Oh was making a discovery that would change the course of the battle. Working with alien engineers from the combined fleet, he had found a way to modify the human quantum fold drives to create a massive gravitational disruption field. "Admiral," he reported to Tejo Kim, "if we coordinate our quantum fold drives with the alien ship's gravity generators, we can create a field that will prevent any ship from leaving this system. The void-born reinforcements would be trapped here until they surrender." Admiral Kim studied the technical specifications. It was ambitious and dangerous, requiring perfect coordination between technologies that had never been designed to work together. But if it worked, they could end the battle without firing another shot. How long would you need to set it up? With the help of the alien engineering teams? Maybe 6 hours? Do it, as human and alien engineers work together to modify their ship's systems. Something remarkable was happening throughout the combined fleet. Beings who had never trusted each other, who had spent centuries viewing other species with suspicion, were working side by side toward a common goal. On the Centauri cruiser, Commander Velnara found herself collaborating with human tactical officers to coordinate defensive patterns. On the Crystal Being vessel, the hive mind was sharing computational resources with human AI systems. Even the proud Draconians were taking suggestions from human strategists. Wing Commander So Young Jang, leading a mixed squadron of human and alien fighters, marveled at how quickly the different species adapted to working together. "It's like we were always meant to fight side by side," she transmitted to her pilots. Flight Lieutenant Junho Kim, who had been rescued from the planet's surface after his heroic sacrifice, was now flying a borrowed Centauri fighter. "Commander, I think that's exactly right. Maybe the galaxy just needed someone to remind us that we're all on the same side." As the gravitational disruption field began to take shape, Admiral Krexmar received a final communication from Admiral Kim. "Voidborn. Fleet, this is your last chance to withdraw. In 1 hour. We will activate a field that will prevent any ship from leaving this system. Surrender now, and we guarantee fair treatment for all your people." Krexmar looked around his bridge at officers who had served him faithfully for years. They were warriors, trained from birth to conquer and destroy. But they were also watching human doctors treat their wounded comrades with compassion they had never experienced before. For the first time in his life, Admiral Krexmar began to wonder if there might be a better way to live among the stars than endless war and conquest. And as he prepared to make the most important decision of his military career, he realized that the humans had already won the most important victory. They had reminded the galaxy what it meant to be civilized. Admiral Taeho Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display as his fleet maintained its protective formation around Alteria Prime. The immediate battle was won, but Voidborn reinforcements were still approaching from 3 different directions. His ships had fought brilliantly, but they were tired and ammunition was running low. "Sir," called Communications Officer Kyung-Ho Park, "we're receiving multiple new contacts entering the system. It's not more Voidborn ships." Taeho frowned and studied the display. New energy signatures were appearing at the edge of the system, different from both human and Voidborn vessels. "Who are they?" "Sir, I'm receiving identification signals from the Centauri Federation. They're requesting permission to join the battle." Before Taeho could respond, more signals appeared. "Admiral, we also have ships from the Orion Trade Consortium entering the system, and the Crystal Beings. And, sir, I'm counting at least 6 different civilizations." On the planet below, Ambassador Jin A.U. watched the orbital displays in the emergency bunker with growing amazement. Counselor Veltar stood beside her, his blue skin pale with exhaustion, but his eyes bright with hope. "I don't understand," Veltar said. "These are the same civilizations that refused to help us. Why are they coming now?" Jin A smiled, though tears were running down her cheeks. "Because someone showed them what courage looks like. Because humans reminded them what it means to do the right thing." In space above them, the first non-human vessel to arrive was the Centauri Federation cruiser Star of Rigel. Captain Yejin Park, commanding the stealth destroyer Shadow of Earth, was the first to make contact with them. "Centauri vessel, this is Captain Park of the Earth Defense Fleet. State your intentions." The response came in the melodic voice typical of Centauri beings. "Captain Park, this is Commander Velnara of the Centauri Federation. We request permission to assist in the defense of Alteria Prime." Captain Park raised an eyebrow. "Commander, didn't your government refuse to help when the Alterians first called for aid?" There was a long pause before the Centauri commander responded. "Captain, we were mistaken. We let fear overcome our duty to protect the innocent. We're here to correct that mistake." Similar conversations were happening throughout the system as more alien fleets arrived. The Orion Trade Consortium sent a message saying they had been delayed by navigation errors. The crystal beings claimed they had been meditating on the proper response. Even the proud Draconian Empire arrived, claiming they had always intended to help, but had been organizing their forces. Technical specialist Sheng Min. O, working in the engineering section of the Indomitable, shook his head as he monitored the communications. They're all lying, of course. They didn't come because they suddenly grew courage. They came because we made them look like cowards. Chief Engineer Min-Soo Han nodded. Maybe, but they're here now. That's what matters. Admiral Tae-Ho Kim found himself in the unprecedented position of commanding a combined galactic fleet. Ships from a dozen different civilizations now formed a protective barrier around the Altarian homeworld. It was the largest alliance fleet, ever assembled, united not by treaty or politics, but by shame and the desire to be on the right side of history. All allied ships, Tae-Ho announced over the combined communication network. Welcome to the defense of Altaria Prime. Our mission is simple. Protect the innocent and end this conflict with minimal bloodshed. The response from the various alien commanders was enthusiastic but awkward. They had spent decades dismissing humanity as primitive newcomers, and now they were taking orders from a human admiral. General Craxus of the Draconian Empire, a scarred veteran of countless galactic wars, transmitted a private message to Admiral Kim. Human Admiral, I want you to know that in 40 years of military service, I have never seen a more professional display of tactical excellence. Your species may be young, but you have the hearts of true warriors. As the combined fleet took up positions around the planet, the approaching Voidborn reinforcements found themselves facing not just the human fleet, but an alliance representing most of the galactic community. What had started as a simple conquest had become a test of galactic values. Admiral Krexmar, his flagship still disabled but his crew receiving medical aid from human doctors, watched the arriving ships with growing despair. How many fleets are out there now? His tactical officer counted the energy signatures. Sir, we're reading ships from 12 different civilizations, over 800 vessels total. For the first time in Voidborn military history, Admiral Krexmar was facing opponents who outnumbered him. But more importantly, he was facing opponents who were fighting for something bigger than conquest or resources. Dr. Sujin Lee had been working for hours treating wounded from all sides of the battle. Voidborn, human, and Altarian patients lay side by side in her medical bay, receiving equal care regardless of which flag they fought under. One young Voidborn soldier, barely old enough to serve in his empire's military, grabbed her hand as she treated his injuries. "Doctor, why are you helping me? I came here to destroy your friends." Dr. Sujin smiled gently. "Because you're hurt, and I'm a doctor. That's all I need to know." The soldier stared at her in confusion. In the Voidborn Empire, enemies were enemies. There was no mercy in war, no compassion for the defeated. Yet here was a human doctor, treating him with the same care she gave her own people. Meanwhile, technical specialist Seung Min Oh was making a discovery that would change the course of the battle. Working with alien engineers from the combined fleet, he had found a way to modify the human quantum fold drives to create a massive gravitational disruption field. "Admiral," he reported to Tae-Ho Kim, "if we coordinate our quantum fold drives with the alien ship's gravity generators, we can create a field that will prevent any ship from leaving this system. The Voidborn reinforcements would be trapped here until they surrender." Admiral Kim studied the technical specifications. It was ambitious and dangerous, requiring perfect coordination between technologies that had never been designed to work together. But if it worked, they could end the battle without firing another shot. How long would you need to set it up? With the help of the alien engineering teams? Maybe 6 hours. Do it. As human and alien engineers worked together to modify their ship's systems, something remarkable was happening throughout the combined fleet. Beings who had never trusted each other, who had spent centuries viewing other species with suspicion, were working side by side toward a common goal. On the Centauri, cruiser Commander Velnara found herself collaborating with human tactical officers to coordinate defensive patterns. On the Crystal Being vessel, the hive mind was sharing computational resources with human AI systems. Even the proud Draconians were taking suggestions from human strategists. Wing Commander So Young Jang, leading a mixed squadron of human and alien fighters, marveled at how quickly the different species adapted to working together. "It's like we were always meant to fight side by side," she transmitted to her pilots. Flight Lieutenant Junho Kim, who had been rescued from the planet's surface after his heroic sacrifice, was now flying a borrowed Centauri fighter. "Commander, I think that's exactly right. Maybe the galaxy just needed someone to remind us that we're all on the same side." As the gravitational disruption field began to take shape, Admiral Krexmar received a final communication from Admiral Kim. "Voidborn. Fleet, this is your last chance to withdraw. In 1 hour, we will activate a field that will prevent any ship from leaving this system. Surrender now, and we guarantee fair treatment for all your people." Krexmar looked around his bridge at officers who had served him faithfully for years. They were warriors, trained from birth to conquer and destroy. But they were also watching human doctors treat their wounded comrades with compassion they had never experienced before. For the first time in his life, Admiral Krexmar began to wonder if there might be a better way to live among the stars than endless war and conquest. And as he prepared to make the most important decision of his military career, he realized that the humans had already won the most important victory. They had reminded the galaxy what it meant to be civilized. 6 months after the Battle of Alteria Prime, Ambassador Young-hee Kang stood before the Galactic Council for the first time in human history. But she wasn't standing as a petitioner begging for recognition. She was standing as the representative of the civilization that had reminded the galaxy what true strength looked like. The great chamber was filled with delegates from hundreds of worlds. Beings of every shape and size sat in curved rows that rose toward the magnificent dome ceiling. At the center of it all, Earth's flag hung beside those of the galaxy's greatest powers. "Members of the Galactic Council," Young-hee began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "6 months ago, the Altarian people sent out a desperate call for help. 13 civilizations said no. Only one said yes." She paused, looking around at the assembled delegates. Many of them looked uncomfortable, remembering their own government's decisions to abandon the Altarians. "Today I stand before you not to judge those decisions, but to talk about what we learned from them. We learned that fear makes us weak. We learned that standing together makes us strong. And we learned that the galaxy is not a collection of separate civilizations. It is a community of people who share the same hopes for their children." In the section reserved for Voidborn delegates, former Admiral Krexmar sat quietly. He had been stripped of his military rank, but not his dignity. After surrendering his fleet at Alteria Prime, he had asked to participate in the human-supervised rehabilitation program for former Voidborn soldiers. The program was the idea of psychologist Inho Chai, who believed that even an empire built on conquest could change if its people were given the chance to see a different way of life. Instead of punishing the defeated Voidborn, the Galactic Alliance was teaching them new skills and helping them find peaceful roles in galactic society. Krexmar had spent the last 6 months working alongside human engineers to help rebuild the worlds his empire had damaged. It was hard work, nothing like the glory of military conquest. But for the first time in his life, he went to sleep knowing that his actions had helped people instead of harming them. The Voidborn Empire no longer exists, Young-Hee continued, but the Voidborn people have found a new purpose. They are working with the Restoration Corps, helping to rebuild the worlds they once attacked. They are proving every day that redemption is possible for anyone willing to choose a better path. Dr. Soo-Jin Lee, watching the speech from the medical facility she now ran on the rebuilt Altarian homeworld, smiled as she tended to her patients. Her hospital treated beings from every corner of the galaxy, all receiving the same level of care regardless of their species or background. It had become a symbol of the new galactic cooperation that emerged after the battle. The Altarian world has been rebuilt, Young-Hee said, but it is no longer just an Altarian world. It has become a symbol of what we can accomplish when we work together. Human engineers worked with Centauri architects, draconian construction. Crews followed crystal being designs. Orion trade ships brought supplies donated by civilizations across the galaxy. In the rebuilt capital city of Altaria Prime, Counselor Veltar worked in his new office, coordinating refugee aid for other worlds in crisis. The building around him was a marvel of interspecies cooperation, combining the best architectural ideas from a dozen different civilizations. Every day, he often told visitors, I am reminded that we are not alone in the universe. When darkness comes, there are always those willing to stand in the light. Young-Hee's speech continued, but perhaps the most important thing we learned is that strength is not measured by the size of your fleet or the power of your weapons. Strength is measured by your willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Chief Engineer Min-Soo Han, now leading a joint human-alien engineering corps, was working on Kepler 442b, where the whole story had begun. Hyunwoo Park and So-Min Lee had been promoted to head the new galactic early warning system, designed to prevent future crises like the one that had nearly destroyed the Altarians. We monitor distress signals from across the galaxy, So-Min explained to the visiting engineers. When someone calls for help, we make sure that call is heard by everyone who can respond. The system had already proven its worth. In the past 6 months, 3 different civilizations had been saved from natural disasters by rapid response teams made up of ships from multiple worlds. The galaxy had learned that cooperation was not just morally right, it was practical. Admiral Tae-Ho Kim, now commanding the Joint Defense Fleet, stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as it patrolled the space lanes between major civilizations. His crew was no longer entirely human. Aliens from a dozen worlds served alongside his original officers, united by shared values rather than shared DNA. Captain Shung-Ho Lim had been promoted to command the new Peacekeeping Academy, where young officers from every galactic civilization learned tactics based on protection rather than conquest. His first graduating class included humans, Centaurians, Draconians, former Voidborn, and even a few crystal beings. Your mission, he told each new class, is not to win wars. Your mission is to prevent them. Your strength comes not from your ability to destroy, but from your commitment to protect. Wing Commander So Young Jang now led mixed-species fighter squadrons that patrolled the galaxy's trade routes. Her pilots represented dozens of different worlds, but they all shared the same creed: protect the innocent, defend the weak, and never leave anyone behind. As Young Hee's speech drew to a close, she looked directly at the camera that was broadcasting her words across the galaxy. Today, I announce the formation of the Galactic Protection Corps. Any civilization, any world, any group of people in need can call for help, and they will receive it. No one will ever again have to face darkness alone. The applause that followed was thunderous, coming from delegates who represented trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. But the real celebration was happening in small communities throughout the galaxy, where ordinary people finally felt safe, knowing that someone was watching out for them. President Ji-Yoon Choi, watching the broadcast from her office on Earth, felt a deep sense of pride. The decision to help the Altarians had been the hardest of her presidency, but it had led to something she had never imagined: a galaxy united by compassion rather than divided by fear. 3 hours after the speech ended, the first call for help came in to the Galactic Protection Corps headquarters. A mining colony in the Rigel sector was being threatened by space pirates. Within minutes, ships from 6 different civilizations were racing to provide assistance. Admiral Kim, responding to the call aboard the Indomitable, smiled as he watched the mixed fleet assemble. Human ships flew alongside former enemies, all united by the simple belief that the strong should protect the weak. As they jumped into quantum-fold space, Admiral Kim thought about how much had changed since that first desperate message from Altaria Prime. The galaxy had learned that there was a better way to live among the stars. They had learned that courage was contagious, that compassion was strength, and that no one had to face the darkness alone. And in the depths of space, racing toward people in need, 300 ships carried more than just weapons and supplies. They carried hope, and the promise that somewhere in the vast universe, there were always those willing to answer when someone called for help. The age of fear was over. The age of protection had begun. And at the center of it all, humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or rulers, but as the guardians who came when no one else would. The galaxy would never be the same again. And that was exactly as it should be.